This is The Hype. It's Cody. Alongside me is a longtime friend of the show. He's the voice, radio voice of the Florida Panthers, back-to-back Stanley Cup champion Florida Panthers. And you can also find him on Sports Cards Nonsense on their page right now, doing nonsense on ice. It's Doug Plagens. Doug, what's going on? Welcome in.
Thanks so much for having me, Cody. It's great to hear your voice. Great to see you again, and great to be here. Glad I could jump in and we could chit chat a bit here about all things the hobby and sports and wherever this might take us today.
I wanted to get you on because I have hockey on the mind right now, big time, for cards. I made a big proclamation on last week's episode. I said I think hockey is the most exciting sport to collect right now, because you have such an exciting, like, how many other sports can you say this, where the last 3-4 classes of number one picks, of high draft picks, these guys are clicking. I just look at the points leaders right now. Macklin Celebrini second in points. Connor Bedard fourth in points. Leo Carlson's, I think, tied for seventh right now. There are a few other sports right now where I feel like you could say those three guys, who I think are among the top guys we have been chasing, if not the top chases the last 2 years, they're all meeting expectations. So I want to hear from you, though, because you live and breathe this game daily. Is this as good a time as ever to get into collecting hockey?
It absolutely is, Cody. And cut me off if I get too long-winded here, because what you said right there, we can take it a number of different directions. And if we're looking at it from the perspective of just the growth of the sport, the talent level across the league is higher than it's ever been right now. And you nailed it right there, whether it's because of the player development and the scouting and everything that's happening. These young players are coming in and they're ready. And so many guys out of these drafts are hitting. And then a lot of credit goes to Upper Deck too, because the guys that are getting in these rookie classes, hobby-wise, the rookie classes have been loaded the last few years. And I knew you go back to 23-24, for example, and the Bedard chase was on. It was kind of hockey's version of everybody chasing those Wemby rookies like they were in basketball. And now you can go back and look, and hey, you were chasing Connor Bedard. Leo Carlson might have been the runner-up prize back then. He was the number 2 pick in that Bedard draft. And you might want to go back through your singles boxes from a couple of years back, because those Leo Carlson cards have picked up a ton of steam. The Logan Cooley cards have picked up steam. The Adam Fantilli cards are looking pretty good. Dustin Wolf, Gilroy, California's own Dustin Wolf. They're looking good. The Yaroslav Askarov cards are in that same 23-24 class. And he looks like he's going to have every opportunity to be the Sharks franchise goalie moving forward. There are a ton of names and a ton of guys who are taking that next step. And that's just the 23-24 class. Cody, when we launched Nonsense on Ice, which is about a month in at this point, the podcast that I'm doing, where we talk hockey, we talk the hobby over on the SCN Media Network. And the first episode, one of the things I talked about was why now? Why is now a great time for Nonsense on Ice? And why is it a great time to talk hockey, to talk about how hockey relates to the hobby, everything that goes along with it? And first of all, there are 32 National Hockey League teams. It feels like every team has bright young stars that are really blossoming on the ice, but are also very collectible if we take it to the hobby realm. Upper Deck has done an outstanding job of, I think, if you ask me, keeping the cost of entry really manageable and giving collectors a lot of different variety as far as options in the hobby are concerned. Whether you're looking for something like the cup that just came out, the 24-25 cup, which is high end, but for a product like that, the cost of entry really manageable in comparison to something you might see in other sports, or flagship Upper Deck hockey, where you're chasing those young guns and you have guys immediately that, hey, if you want to hold them, there's value there. If you're into getting those cards for sale right away, you could pay for the wax that you're ripping just because of the young guns that you're pulling. Again, there is a lot to like right now as far as the hockey world's concerned. Plus, it's an Olympic year. NHL players are going to the Olympics for the first time since 2014. And you know, Cody, as well as anybody, that when the NHL players go overseas and play in the Olympics, or if the Olympics happen to be here, wherever they are, you're going to have eyeballs on the Olympics and
Yes.
on hockey specifically that may not always be on the NHL day to day. A lot of your casual sports fans might take notice of some of these players, and maybe that fandom goes back to when the players return to their NHL teams. So like I said, whether it's the young talent, whether it's what's coming up internationally, whether it's the fact that the NHL is growing and we've seen the league grow and the popularity grow, or it's Upper Deck doing a fantastic job giving collectors a lot of options at a lot of different price points. I think it's a great time to be a hockey fan and to be exploring the hockey card space as well.
Yeah, there's a lot of points you made there. I definitely want to kind of delve into some of them a little more. But first, I got to mention, I'm glad you mentioned the Olympic stuff, because I think you said it. There are more eyeballs on that sometimes than you're going to get from your average regular season game. We just saw it with the Four Nations tournament, that I think the final had higher ratings than the Stanley Cup game, if I'm not mistaken. There were some of those where people love international hockey. It's so exciting, and you can feel the excitement and the energy from the players too. To see that come back in the Olympics, I think is going to be massive. And even more so, now starting to hear Bedard, Macklin, these young guys are like, hey, they're forcing their way onto those international rosters.
Yeah, they're really exciting to watch, and there are going to be some difficult decisions that have to be made as far as the rosters for these national teams coming up. But yeah, it's just the fact that when players go play in the Olympics, and we've seen it going back to 2010 and Crosby and the golden goal and USA Canada and the gold medal game in Vancouver and everything that went with that, you're going to have all your hockey diehards paying attention. Your NHL fans are going to be paying attention, but you're also going to have a lot of people that, like I said, come over and maybe don't watch hockey every night. They're going to take note of these players. And I think especially here in North America, from the perspective of, the American players, the Canadian players, if one of these two teams were to win a gold medal, I think you're going to see a lot of buzz as far as maybe fandom increase in the sport, things like that. You're going to see people start to, take notice of certain players that they may not have known much about before. And obviously in this world here in the hobby, I think you're going to see a lot of buzz surround certain players' cards if there are some really big time clutch performances at the Olympics. So it's certainly something to watch. It's not something we get every year, and I think that adds to it. And Cody, you said it, the Four Nations face-off, that was only 4 teams.
Yeah.
You're going to have a lot bigger field when it comes time for the Olympics, and a lot more guys who have connections to the hobby, whether it's, maybe a guy has a big game in the Olympics and you go back and you realize you had a young gun from a couple of years ago that suddenly is getting a lot of buzz, or a Future Watch autograph or something like that. But it's going to bring it's going to bring a lot of different eyeballs to the sport. It's going to be really exciting. And then it's going to be exciting to see how that continues as you get back from the Olympics and you're right into playoff races in the run to the Stanley Cup playoffs after that.
Yeah, it's a really exciting time on the calendar. But the moment we hit January, where you've got all the stadium series, you've got all the All-Star games, the Olympics, and then right after the Olympics, straight into the playoffs. It's a really exciting time on the calendar that's just about to come up. Just something I was also thinking, and this is kind of a broader sports thing in general, interesting convergence of a lot of big international tournaments for big sports. You got hockey, obviously, with the Winter Olympics. You got the World Cup. And look, I'm going to say it, and I think we could say it now. The World Baseball Classic, they put their flag down in 2023 and said, we're a legit world tournament. You've got all 3 happening next year. I'm trying to rack my brain here. I don't know if we have had that many major international tournaments in 1 year since we've had, we'll go post 2020, post hobby boom. I think that's going to be very interesting to see for all 3 sports, how that's going to affect the market. Just something I was kind of thinking about the other day.
Yeah, the World Baseball Classic has really had a rise, and I feel like everybody remembers the Ohtani Trout moment and things like that from years past. But with the NHL players having not been to the Olympics since 2014, I think that adds a lot to it. We saw during the Four Nations that USA Canada, not even the final game. You remember the Saturday night, and then you had Matthew Tkachuk and Brandon Hagel drop the gloves right off the face-off, and then off the next face-off, you had Brady Tkachuk and Sam Bennett drop the gloves, and then you had JT Miller and Colton Parayko drop the gloves later on in that first period. And I felt like for about 48 hours after that game, and it's amazing because that wasn't even a championship game. For about 48 hours after that, it was the talk of the sports world, not just the hockey world. It was driving sports conversation. Now, Olympic rules a little different. I don't think you're going to see the gloves flying off like you did maybe in that Four Nations tournament at times. But it's going to be exciting, no doubt about it. And again, I think the big things, it's something we haven't had in a long time. And I think there's going to be a lot of intrigue on it because of that. We haven't seen NHL players play for a gold medal since 2014. So it's going to be special.
Yeah, I mean, you saw how much people are craving international play in hockey, and we saw it with the Four Nations. It's gonna be a lot of fun. I really, really can't wait for it. You're kind of pivoting to. There was something else you mentioned when you were hyping up, and I'm glad you did, about the state of hockey collecting right now. And I think Upper Deck, a company that I will admit on this show, we give some soft jabs to Upper Deck through the years. I think specifically about the calendar getting backed up and all that, but you know what? I think they're really having the last laugh right now. Is everything in this hobby, so many hands are changing, IPs, brands are changing, and here's Upper Deck with hockey, with these. You mentioned this incredible crop of young stars in this sport. Obviously, they can't control that, but they have. I think they're meeting the moment, is what I'm trying to say. And now you can say, look, 24-25 Cup hockey just arrived. They're caught up. They're here. And the cards have always, I think, in my opinion, have always been among, if not the best quality, the best design in this hobby. Now that they're going to be, I think, solely focused, and not solely, they have other brands as well, but much more focused on what is really their number one brand. That to me also is a reason to feel really good about just the quality of collecting and the reliability going forward.
Yeah, the cards are beautiful, and I'm not saying it just because they're a partner of ours over at Nonsense on Ice, but the cards are outstanding. They're beautiful cards. The autographs look great. The patches look great, and they kind of ended up with a perfect scenario with the timing of the release and what Macklin Celebrini's doing on the ice to be kind of that main rookie to drive the cup. But you have guys like Cutter Gauthier, for example, he's making a lot of noise for the Anaheim Ducks having a nice year. You're seeing a lot of guys from that 24-25 class. Jesper Wallstedt, a rookie from the Minnesota Wild, a goaltender who's had an outstanding run here to start the year. You're seeing a lot of those rookies from that class drive that product at the time that the top end product of that year is coming out. But I've always said Upper Deck does such a great job with the quality of the cards and offering up so many different options for collectors. Like we said, whether you're looking for those top end autographs, or whether you're looking for a set to collect, whether you're looking for something in the middle, on card autographs. Hey, I love products. We were talking about our podcast, and that episode's going to drop here very soon, but not on Nonsense on Ice, we were talking about ice and credentials, and the fact that you can get on-card autographs in, beautiful looking on-card autographs in, kind of products that if you were to throw them into comparison, that are kind of, in the mid-range, that a lot of people can go out and access and get. There are a lot of great things offered, but with Macklin Celebrini, you talk about just kind of creating your own breaks. We always say that in sports, and I think this is something that really broke in Upper Deck's favor with the timing of this release, and it's coinciding with Macklin Celebrini, a 19-year-old, turning into a true superstar in the National Hockey League. And I know you guys in the Bay Area have to be loving this, because for so long, you guys were, I know they never got over that final hump and won a cup, but you guys had the better part of 15 years where Thornton and Marlowe and Brent Burns, and you go right down the list, and all these, and Joe Pavelski, and all these players that became synonymous with the San Jose Sharks, and you could tell how important they were to a great fan base out there. And now all of a sudden, been a changing of the guard, and Macklin Celebrini and Will Smith and, a handful of other players are on the way, and the Sharks look like they're ready to start that ascent maybe sooner than some others thought. Macklin Celebrini is a special player, and the fact that now his most sought after cards are coming out right in line with him putting together a superstar season number 2 in the National Hockey League. It's been exciting to see for a number of different reasons in and outside the hobby.
Yeah, you could not have asked for better timing to have that product come out the week where I think he just crossed the 100 games played mark. And I as a Sharks fan, you have to take a step back. I never want to get
he's a teenager. It's unbelievable.
No, he's 19, and you see these things where first 100 games, most points, and you see the names Gretzky, you see Crosby, you see Lemieux, and then there's his name. It is mind blowing to see it, and I every time I try to take a step back and go, don't get, he's 19. There's a lot of time, but then all these things come out where he's on the same list as Connor McDavid and Sidney Crosby and Wayne Gretzky, and gosh, and the other part of it too is on the ice, you watch him play and you're like, no, yeah, this kid is special. This kid is incredible.
I thought it last season. I mean, seeing him play a couple of times in his rookie year as an 18-year-old, I was really excited to see him play in person. And after seeing him play in person, I thought it's not even necessarily what the plays that he makes with the puck on his stick. He makes little plays away from the puck that are well beyond his years, things you don't typically see out of a teenager coming in. And you see it so often with a lot of the teenagers that break in, the phenom type guys. Forget that these guys all the way through their hockey journeys, they're leaned on for point production and to create offense and everything like that. When you get to the National Hockey League, you have to be able to develop, everybody's got to be able to develop some semblance of a two-way game, but you see him making these high intelligence plays away from the puck and defensively and things like that. It just speaks to what kind of a player he can be. And, you see it in the National Hockey League. Now you go back, the teams that have won Stanley Cups in recent years, you have to have that workhorse number 1 center that you can match up against the other team's best players, but that you can also still count on to produce offense that can be a leader for your team. And whether it's been the Panthers winning back-to-back with Alexander Barkov being that guy, or Colorado with Nathan McKinnon, or Tampa Bay with Braden Point, or Vegas with Jack Eichel. These are all different players, but they're all number 1 centers that can play upwards of 20 minutes a night if you need them to against the opponent's best guys, and they can still produce and they can come through in the clutch, and they are relied upon as leaders for their team. And you see San Jose with Celebrini. They've got a guy like that. They've got their answer to other teams having those big workhorse number 1 centers. It's something in the National Hockey League you have to be able to take that next step, and San Jose's got one of those guys.
Yeah, it's an incredibly exciting time. I could talk about how exciting and how fun, just how in general, it's nice that it's fun to watch the team again, and you can see they're doing fun things post game. They got the big shark necklace now that they give the players post game, and when whoever the player of the game is. So that is just such a breath of fresh air. But I won't go too far into the Bay Area bias. We do that enough on this show, but we'll talk a little bit more about some of the other young players. And I think what's interesting is we're talking so much about Macklin. Just a year ago, it was all about Connor, and he's still there. I don't want to even discredit him. What he's doing is also incredible that he has reached the heights he's reached. But I am going to group together those 3 guys I mentioned at the top: Macklin, Connor, and Leo Carlsson. Of those 3, and I mean, we just talked a lot about Macklin. Maybe the answer is easy. Like, which one do you like the most on the ice? But maybe even more so, who do you like as a collector? I know Macklin's prices are already at a point where there might be people who say just the price of entry is way too high for this guy.
Now, I'll tell you what, and I'm not trying to dance around it, but from a who would you like on the ice perspective, there are differences to all their games. But that being said, any team in the league would be thrilled to have any of these three players.
Yeah.
And I don't think Adam Fantilli of the Jackets is too far behind in terms of being a number one center. That year that Bedard went number one, Bedard went 1, Carlson went 2, Fantilli went 3. In a normal year, any of those three guys would have been a number one pick. They just happened to all be coming out the same year. So it was an incredibly loaded draft class that year. But if we're looking at it from a hobby perspective, and I've talked a lot about these three guys, obviously, because of the starts of the season that they've all had over on my show. But if we're looking at it from a card perspective, right now, the Celebrini PSA 10 Young Gun, which I think is kind of a good baseline comparison just to look at for where the markets are on a lot of individuals. The Celebrini PSA 10 Young Gun is, in a lot of cases, kind of surpassed the Bedard by a little bit lately, but the Bedard pop count is a lot higher. That being said, in some ways, I'm almost thinking maybe a little bit of a word of caution, because I bet a lot of those Celebrinis are sitting at PSA right now or are in transit to PSA, and they just haven't popped yet. They just haven't been slabbed yet. And I do think there's still a lot of people ripping the 24-25 products. So there are probably still a lot of those Celebrinis still coming out of the packs. So I think the pop count on the Celebrinis inevitably is going to rise. When you've had a start to the season like he has, people in the hobby take note, and a lot of Celebrini cards start going off to the grading companies. You remember when the Bedards came out, it was a free-for-all. People who didn't collect hockey cards, people who'd never bought hockey cards before, were coming over to chase Connor Bedard, and a lot of those were going right to the grading companies. So that's why I would probably say that the pop counts on the Bedard PSA 10 Young Guns are a little higher, which might be sending the price in certain directions right now. If you're looking at a guy to buy, maybe the best buying opportunity right now is Leo Carlson, just because his prices have been a bit lower than the other two guys. That being said, the prices have probably 3x'd on Leo Carlson PSA 10 Young Guns since the week before the season. I crunched some of those numbers a couple of weeks back, and the week before the season started, you could routinely get those PSA 10 Young Guns under $100, probably like $70 to $90, and those are, well in excess of $200 cards at this point in time. So did you miss the boat entirely? I don't think so. It's just more expensive now than it would have been had you gotten in before the season started. Long and roundabout way of saying, we're in a fortunate place, because I think you could justify buying any of these guys. And I think the same thing goes for Bedard, and where he might be a little different than the other two is there might be a little bit more bring you out of your seat, a little bit more electricity in what Bedard can pull off on the ice. Right. He's got kind of that, like I said, that kind of bring you out of your seat ability, to make plays. Not that the other two don't. I think they're all world playmakers, but Bedard has a little bit more of those, magician tendencies, I think, sometimes with what he's able to do with the puck. So maybe some more flash to his game than the other two guys. And I think if you were to look back, I had somebody ask me a mailbag question, about a particular Bedard card and what to do with it. And I said, right now, honestly, unless you're really trying to parlay it into a card for your PC or something like that, I'm probably sitting on my Connor Bedard cards right now. I have a few. I don't have anything crazy, life-changing Connor Bedard cards, right. But I think right now is probably a time to sit on those. And I also don't think it's a bad time to go out and look for deals, because I do still think there are some deals to be had. Chicago's turning the corner, and I think Connor Bedard kind of got maybe a little bit unfairly overlooked last year. He still had 150 some points over his first two seasons as a teenager on a team that was down near the bottom of the standings. And, it was tough sledding for Chicago those last couple of years, but they look like they're turning a corner, and he looks like he's kind of taken a next step towards superstardom. So I don't think you can go wrong with any of the three.
Yeah, I mean, I like what you said. I think there is definitely an argument to just sit on a lot of these, because the argument being, and again, I know we're talking about players in sort of rarefied air, but these guys are also doing things that we have not seen since some of the biggest names in the sport. But you see just over the last year, as Ovechkin was going on his run, just how his market just had a massive boom. Crosby cards are still incredibly popular and still incredibly lucrative. And, obviously McDavid, all those guys as well. So yeah, there's absolutely an argument to just say, I think in terms of hockey, that's actually a great call to just say, sit on these guys. Whereas I think for maybe some of the other sports, particularly I think of baseball with top prospects, I just think it's always just get out early. Those guys I think are less of a guarantee than the top tier talent who's drafted in the NHL.
And I do think hockey offers you a little bit more opportunity than the other sports to maybe find a guy under the radar or do a little of your own research and scouting, if you will. Watch some games, see what some guys are all about. I think in hockey, there's a little bit more runway as far as time to do your homework and then making your determinations on what kind of cards you want to go out and buy. Whereas in the other sports, from the second the draft happens, or in the case of, if you're looking at Bowman, guys could be 3-4 years out from making a major league debut and their hype could be higher than it's ever going to be. I feel like in hockey with a lot of guys, Bedard may be the exception, Celebrini may be an exception because they were such highly touted number one draft picks. I think with a lot of the guys, you might have a little bit more time to do some homework, do some research, and then make some determinations and get in on the ground floor, if you will, for some of these guys. And especially, like I said, if it's a guy who was not a first overall pick, there might be a little bit less fanfare for somebody who's not a first overall pick. And maybe if it's somebody coming from overseas where there just haven't been as many people who've been following his ascent before coming over to North America. I think there are some opportunities with hockey that don't exist in football and baseball, for example, when you're doing your prospecting.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think I think you get a lot more runway with hockey with especially how young a lot of these guys are getting drafted, where you say, oh, he's 24, 25. It's like, well, he's been in the league for 6-7 years at this point. And now he's coming to his own. He's like, well, now he's still has a huge, long career ahead of him. That is a great point and something definitely to keep in mind. A few more minutes here with Doug Plagens. Let's talk about some of the veterans too. We've been doing a lot of rookie talk, but I think if we're talking that the hockey market is in a great spot right now, well then, by that logic, a rising tides lifts all ships, right? So you did do a great comparison in, I think, in one of your videos for Nonsense on Ice about where Macklin's market is versus where Nathan MacKinnon's market is. Nathan MacKinnon, as decorated a player as there is currently in the NHL, Stanley Cup champion, all the above, and how the price of entry for that is a lot lower than it would be for Macklin, which MacKinnon still has a lot of career ahead of him where he could really solidify himself as one of the great players in NHL history. So with that in mind, do you see some of these veteran guys getting that little bump here as more fans are getting in tune with hockey, more collecting, getting that big chase with Celebrini and Bedard and going, oh, wait a minute, there's all of these incredible veterans who are very reasonably priced. And of those guys, if there's like a few who come to mind where you're like, I would absolutely be a buyer on player A, player B, if you have a few that you personally are in on.
Yeah, there's a few different ways to approach it, especially this year. And that was thanks for watching that comparison. That one kind of caught my attention because Nathan MacKinnon's as unique talent as there is in the National Hockey League today, and one of the most unique talents that we've seen, really over the last quarter century, kind of in the post Gretzky NHL era. You look at what he's able to do with such an explosiveness to his game. He's as entertaining a player to watch as there has been, and he's got the hardware to back it up. He's got a Stanley Cup, and as you said, he's still got a lot of career ahead of him. He's a 2013-14 rookie, if you're looking at it from a hobby perspective. But the fact that you can grab, and those prices have probably fluctuated a little bit because Nathan MacKinnon and the Avalanche are off to kind of historic starts this season, and McKinnon's been driving it, and he looks like he's putting himself in the running for a Hart Trophy, and we'll see how things play out. Obviously, it's a long season, but you can. At the time I did that comparison, you're looking at PSA 10 Macklin Celebrini Young Guns, which I am not opposed to. If you want to go out and get one of those, I am not opposed to it. I'm that big a believer in him. But you're looking at those being a few $100 more than if you were to go out and find a BGS 9.5 MacKinnon. And BGS 9.5 seemed to be kind of the better comparison because of the era that those came out. I think back in 2013, I think more of those were going to BGS. And I think, there are just a number of factors for that. So that was what I was using for the comparison. But at that point in time, we're only talking a few weeks ago, the highest priced McKinnon BGS 9.5 I saw was sort of an outlier at about $625. I think it was $623, I think. And that was the true gem that had 495. So that was the true gem, which kind of made that a little bit of an outlier in comparison to others. I thought that was an interesting comparison, and it all goes back to what kind of a collector and what kind of a buyer you are. Nathan McKinnon could walk away from the National Hockey League tomorrow, and I don't think that card's going down in value. I think his legacy is that cemented, and I think he would have a plaque in Toronto at the Hall of Fame as soon as the required wait time expires. He would be enshrined. So I think that it just depends on what kind of a buyer you are. As far as the veteran guys go, though, Cody, I think there are a couple of interesting ways to approach it this year. You have a lot of veteran guys who are accomplished. You have a lot of veteran guys who are still looking for that first ring. When you look at maybe a guy like McDavid and Draisaitl, really at this point, the only things they haven't done is win a Stanley Cup. You look at it from another perspective. You have the veteran guys who have accomplished a lot, and maybe you take that a step further. Look at the Olympic rosters, analyze the Olympic field. Who do you think? Are you going to maybe you peg a couple of guys and say, hey, maybe these are guys that if their teams are to win a gold medal, you figure they're going to be front and center right in the middle of it. And there's going to be a lot of attention paid to these guys. You look at Team USA is going to go in as one of the teams to watch. And whether it's, if you don't have a rookie card of one of the Kachucks in your collection, I know I'm a little biased on that one, but you might, maybe those are going to be guys that are going to be front and center for, Team USA when that happens. I know Matthew's still working his way back from an injury and hopefully everything is a go there, but Connor Hellebuck, he's got multiple Vezina trophies. Another one of those guys that just that top end hardware is eluding him. If he were to get back from his injury, all systems go, and they were to win gold medal and Connor Hellebuck put up heroic performances in net, that could put him onto the radar in a totally different way. Same thing if you're looking at maybe an Austin Matthews. I know I've mentioned a lot of the Team USA guys here, but I think that's just illustrating that the Olympics offer you up a whole different way to approach things. And right now is not a bad time to start looking at those Olympic rosters. I think the roster deadline is at the end of this month. I think it's the 31st, and then the games obviously happen in February. So you have a little bit of time, but those are going to be, if you pick a couple of guys, say, hey, these are guys I think that are going to make big splashes in the Olympics. I want to go out and start collecting some of the cards now. I don't think I think it's certainly a good time to start maybe going through that and doing a little bit of Olympic preparation. The other thing, Cody, and I know sometimes people get caught up in the moment about this, and it happens in all the sports, all the contact sports, all the full contact sports. There are some big time guys who've missed some time with injury this season. And, that's maybe another way to approach. I'm kind of getting off on a tangent here, but another way to approach looking at some of the veteran guys. Jack Hughes is out with an injury, and I know he's a really gifted offensive player, and the Devils
has been a huge chase in the past. Yeah,
exactly. And he's been out with an injury. I mentioned Matthew Tkachuk's been out with an injury. Connor Hellebuck's been out with an injury, but there's some top end guys across the National Hockey League who have missed time and just came back or are still going to be out for a bit longer. Right here with the Panthers, they've been dealing with Alexander Barkov going down with that injury during training camp. And, there are a lot of top end guys that have been out missing time. And maybe from a hobby perspective, because of that, they've flown under the radar, and you might have a chance to go out and pick up some nice cards of these players that, are guys that are on future Hall of Fame type of tracks. So a lot of different ways to approach it, but the game is in such a great place. You look at the veteran players, McKinnon, we've talked a lot about him, but a player like Cale Makar, for example, who's doing things that we hadn't. I feel like Cale Makar almost took defensemen to a different level in the hobby, sort of like we saw Paul Skeens do with pitchers.
That's a great call.
Because Cale Makar came in right out of college, right into the Stanley Cup playoffs when he made his debut and was just electrifying. And now he's got He's got a cup. He's got Norris trophies. He's got a cup. Feels like the Norris trophy is going to be his for years until somebody comes in and takes it. He's going to be a contender for it for years. I think he put defensemen into a different stratosphere, and we're seeing that now with Matthew Schaefer and what he's done coming out of the gate, and the demand there's been for his cards. And Lane Hudson was a massive chase last year, and is a really gifted player. So yeah, there are a lot of different avenues opening up in the hockey collecting world.
Yeah, I think you speak to it in general. I like the comparison with defensive players or defensemen and pitchers. Collectors, I think maybe a new breed of collectors are like, whatever, I'll collect what I want to collect. If this guy looks like a stud, then I'm going to collect that guy. I don't care what position they're playing, So hey, I like all those suggestions. Austin Matthews is the guy who kind of like, right when you said his name, like, yeah, of course, Austin Matthews, a guy who I feel like after, in the couple of weeks after the Ovechkin record breaker, we all, of course, then went, well, who's going to be the next one? And Austin Matthews' name, I felt like kind of came up a lot of like, well, if anybody's going to do it, he is on a great pace right now. And just all it's going to take for him, one huge goal in the Olympics.
And there are a couple teams out there that have been starved for cups for a long time.
Yeah. Toronto, of course, front and center.
And with, I think Toronto and Montreal, it's kind of a different beast there, because Montreal last won it in 1993. The Leafs haven't won it since 1967. And if one of those teams win it, I think that the players on that team are going to be so revered if one of those teams gets over the hump. So if you were a believer in one of those teams, if Austin Matthews were to deliver Toronto a cup, I feel like his mystique in the sport and in the hobby would go to a totally different stratosphere, just because he would be front and center helping deliver something to a massive fan base that just hasn't been there for a long time. Same thing if Montreal, and they look like they're developing, they've had some ups and downs. It's a very young team, but they look like they're continuing to take steps. As far as non-Panthers out there that I love to watch, Nick Suzuki is really high up on that list. And, you take it a step further on that team. We mentioned Lane Hudson, Ivan Demidov, who's been one of the big chases this year, he's got superstar potential. If the Canadians were to take that step in the years to come and win a Stanley Cup, same thing. I think you'd see the mystique of certain players involved there go to just different levels. You see it, Cody, in other sports. For example, when Yankees have success, they kind of get into this almost mythical stratosphere. And I think the same thing would happen if you saw the Leafs and or the Canadians in coming years get over the hump and win a Stanley Cup. You'd see a lot of their cornerstone players go to really big heights in the hobby.
Yeah. I was going to say, there's a reason why, I think of Chris Bryant, why it took a long time for maybe the hobby to finally say, all right, maybe it's not happening anymore for him, because he got that MVP and broke the curse. That goes a really, really long way. If they do it in Toronto, you're right. That's beyond even maybe what would happen with breaking the curse in Chicago for those fans, especially given what they have to deal with in October too this year. Hey, Doug, before we leave you, I do want to just talk to you about the ice. On the ice, you mentioned your Panthers. Hey, it still feels good to say back-to-back champions. I'm sure that probably hasn't worn off yet, but it's been a bit of an up and down start to the year, dealing with injuries. A nice win as of this recording, a nice win yesterday. Mm-hmm. But they are currently looking outside in right now, but in an incredibly tight Eastern Conference. I think there's only 4 points or something separating the wildcard teams, or in the Atlantic. It's really, really tight, basically. So I don't want to say there's a panic meter this early in the season, but what's the general vibe right now, and how do you feel about the team going forward as we are getting into the second, almost the second half of the season at this point?
Yeah, it's been a wild schedule, because obviously with everything shutting down in February because of the Olympics, it's a really condensed schedule. Otherwise, no panic. Tell you what, being around these guys every single day. It's a group of guys that are as battle tested as it gets. And you always hear about the value of experience. And these guys just know what their game needs to look like. They know what it takes. They've seen going back these last 3 seasons, 3 straight Cup final appearances, from the loss to Vegas in the 23 final to the wins over Edmonton in 24 and 25. They've seen just about everything the game can throw their way. And this year, you knew that coming out of the gate, it was going to look different. There was going to be a little bit of a different feel. Matthew Tkachuk, during training camp, we were told December-ish on the timeline there. So, fingers crossed. We're hoping sooner rather than later, because he is such an important part to this Panthers team. And, that's an understatement even saying that. Alexander Barkov had the unfortunate injury during training camp, and the day that happened, the team put out the statement saying 7 to 9 months. So, all you can do is say, we'll wait and see. Time will tell on that one. But, guys up and down the lineup, Dmitry Kulikov's missed time, and Tomas Nosek has missed time, and Jonah Gadjevich has missed time. And these are all guys that were key parts of the run to the Cup final last year. It shows you just, first of all, the work that Paul Maurice has done as a head coach and his staff, and the work that Bill Zito, the GM's done, because for a lot of teams, you lose a list of players like that, and it would be tough sledding. But this team's kept itself right in a very tight race in the Eastern Conference. And I tell you what, another guy that, we probably could have mentioned, we were talking about veterans and legacy players in the hobby and in this era, but we talk about Crosby, we talk about Ovechkin, but here we are in 2025, about to flip to 2026, and Brad Marchand is producing at a better than point a game level, still doing it. And, he just signed that new contract after coming over and being a huge part of the Cup run last year. And I feel like the hockey world, I know the nature of the way he plays, he's gotten under the skin of a lot of fan bases over time, but I think it's one of those scenarios we're watching it kind of unfold, where as time's gone on, people have realized just how important this guy's been for the sport, and how much fun he's been to watch, and how interesting he is when he gets on the microphone. And it's all true. I can tell you, just interacting with him on the practice days and things, he brings an attitude to the arena every single day, the kind of guy that you're excited to see him every single day at the rink. His teammates feel that way about him. And I think you're going to see him get some more hobby love too as time goes on. Hit the 1,000-point mark this year. And as far as I'm concerned, a surefire Hall of Famer who's still playing at an elite level. So, he's been a huge part of this Panthers team and a big part of what's made them so entertaining night to night. But yeah, this team, there's no panic whatsoever in this Panthers team's game. When you're as accomplished as they've been, they know what they need to do. And the one wait and see is you just hope that as time goes on, they can at least get gradually more healthy and get those important pieces back into the lineup. Says a lot though, Cody. It's a great time to follow the league, because, here we are middle of December, and out of 32 teams, you're probably looking at 27 that at this point realistically say we want to make the Stanley Cup playoffs. You look back a handful of years, and it felt like about 5 or so years ago, there was a strange number of teams that were kind of at square one of a rebuild. And now those teams have had their high picks, and they've had guys blossom, and now they're taking those steps. But the teams that have been your perennial playoff teams, they're not ready to give up their seat at the table just yet. Yeah. So it's made the league, the competitive balance, the phrase that everybody likes to use, that much more interesting.
It's a great time because you said it. There are these super hungry young teams right now, and then you have these teams like Colorado who are just look like they are unstoppable on these historic runs to start the season. It's a great mix. And hey, for your Panthers, we saw it last year. It's just get into the dance and get healthy at the right time. And if they can do that, they are as scary, if not the scariest team in the Stanley Cup playoffs. So, hey, all the best. We're always rooting outside of the Sharks. Mojobreak is always rooting for Doug Plagens of the Florida Panthers. So, Doug, we do appreciate you. Plug away. Where can we find you? Nonsense on Ice. Tell us more about it. Where can we find it?
Nonsense on Ice, weekly podcast talking hockey and the hobby. We hit on a lot of different things. The show moves. We have our hobby 3 stars every week. It's not always stat dependent, not always stat driven, but the hobby 3 star is one of our favorite things. I like to touch on break spots in the hobby that I see as a good value. I like to touch on value vintage picks every week. We have some exciting guests that come on. We usually drop on Tuesdays, so you can look at it wherever you find your podcasts. It's Nonsense on Ice. You can find it on Spotify. You can find it on Apple. You can find it on YouTube. Again, wherever you get your podcasts, we invite you to check it out, like, subscribe, comment, ask questions, whatever it might be. You can find me on the socials at Doug Plagens on the Twitter X platform and on Instagram as well. Always great to hear from everybody out there. And again, we're always keeping you updated on all that. So exciting stuff there. Anytime you listen to a Panthers broadcast, if you hear, home road, wherever it is, if you turn on Panthers radio, whether it's on your Sirius XM or the Panthers app or the NHL app, if you're outside our listening area in South Florida, that's me, and we welcome you aboard for that too. So, hey, you guys, I was pumped to be able to stop by the shop in would have been early November.
Yeah,
pick myself up some stuff there, and it was great to see great to always stop in at the Mojobreak shop. And for the folks out there, it's not just because they're my friends, and Cody was kind enough to have me on the show today, but if you ever find yourself in Northern California in driving distance, check out the store. And I'm interested to see the way all the new stuff comes to fruition as well. I'm really excited to see that.
You and me both. I'm very excited. I'm seeing stuff getting installed, floorboards, studios, all that. Tentatively, I think we've been said the same this publicly. We're looking at the Super Bowl here at Levi's Stadium in Santa Clara. That is the hope. That is the goal. So we will see. I don't want to. I'm writing that in pencil, not in pen. Let's put it that way. So here's hoping. But hey, Doug, one of the best in the business. So we always appreciate you coming on.
Thanks so much for having me.